This video can be quite interesting. I actually heavily tested today the Sennheiser HD550 audiophile headphones compared to my previous, much cheaper Phillips SHP9600. So I actually compare them both. The Philips sells on Amazon as of now for $60 and the Sennheiser for $350. So that's close to 6 times the price difference. Now, the good thing is that that's a good thing to be where I actually can test between the two, because before that, I was always counting on others to tell me, well, what's the difference? Should I buy this? Should I buy that? Whether I notice any difference, whether some diminishing returns. So now, testing it myself, I can give you the answer myself. Of course, there are lots of also subjective variables here, but definitely there are huge differences. And it's kind of funny, before that I thought, maybe, it's not something such a big, if I'm paying like 6 times more, I'm probably not going to get something that much different. Would I? Of course, this is a limited comparison, yet I wanted to share it. All right, for now, I'm just going to refer to them as Philips and Sennheiser. So first of all, both of them were open back headphones. And when I used the Philips, I actually was pretty happy. It took me some time to get used to it because I remember it felt very dark and heavy and bass heavy. But after some time, I get used to it. But unless you have something to compare it to as a reference, which I did, by the way, I compared to the KC75, more very natural on-ear headphones. The transition wasn't easy, but eventually I got used to them and I actually enjoy it. I actually felt that I'm getting very good sound quality. Compared to, for example, close-back headphones that I bought and used previously, this was a huge difference. All right, so what are the differences that I noticed? Jump straight into it, all right? So I played, for example, Bloodborne. And I quickly switched between the two, both connected, one to the DAC, the other one to the computer, and actually listen to the two one after the other, so I can clearly tell the differences. So in Bloodborne, for example, the Philips produces very metallic. I was quite surprised. It felt like I comparing close back to open back, but actually these are both open back headphones. But in comparison, the Philips felt like metallic and enclosed, more like, again, kind of a metallic sound compared to the Sennheiser, which felt so much more natural. The Philips just sounds so muddy and muffled. All these sounds kind of cramped together, and the lack of details and separation, it was just mind-blowing. I even asked myself how you can consider what you hear with the Philips as good sound quality. Now, I'm talking everything by default. Of course, you can make changes with Equalizer, both headphones. But by default, the Philips were very bass heavy. It's just the bass and the mid bass was so elevated. And because my brain and my ear, I get used to it, I didn't pay attention to it. But it was, well, once you try both, you're going to understand the difference. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. Another thing I want to add that I can significantly increase the bass with the Sennheiser, get much better bass, and with much better separation, it won't sound muffled, and I also can reach much deeper frequencies into the bass and sub-bass. Some of them with the sub-bass, I can't actually hear with the Philips. Even though the frequencies are listed there in the specs, I just can't hear them. And I tested it with a simple video that actually tests all these frequencies. So it's not about how strong the bass is, it's how good it is in terms of keeping the bass, again, separate from others, not muffling all the other frequencies, and also being able to hear sub-bass. This is kind of more of a rattle, a kind of a vibration more than a sound. And it's way miles better on the Sennheiser which have, by the way, bass extension compared to the Philips. Oh, losing tracking again. Whoa. Also, I went back to listen a bit to a guitar in Expedition 33. And then the sounds of the guitar sound so much less natural compared to the Sennheiser. It was so much fun listening to the music, to the sound here, compared to the Philips. I'm not going to talk about music here, which is of course much better as well, but I'm just saying that particular instance, I just enjoy listening to it way more than the Philips. The Philips kind of sound more like an electronic guitar compared to just a classic acoustic guitar. Next, I went back to Concord. Yeah, I have some videos of that, lots of them. Here, again, you can see the sound, what I wrote. The sound quality suffered from a lack of naturalness, presenting very, on the Phillips, presenting very heavy, dark, and muddy sound. Sound effects are indistinct and muddled due to the poor separation. And crucially, again, this is huge. I didn't even expect that. Footsteps are barely perceptible in comparison, overshadowed by muffled mids and highs. But the HD550 provides remarkably clearer and more elevated audio for these details. It's amazing how clearly you can hear footsteps. This was huge. I'm not talking about really small difference compared to the Phillips.
Got your safe zone right here.
Hold up, I need to heal.
So for competitive player where footstep and any open location is important, there's no comparison here. It's just a day and night difference. That's all I can say. Now, here I tested it in Delta Force. Again, games like Battlefield and such with explosions, shooting, lots of visual effects happening in the background. Here, the lack of clarity in neutral low mids make the sound less convincing for outdoor scene. It's amazing that I didn't even notice it. Of course, until you have something to compare it to, you won't notice the difference. I just put the 550 on and it was so airy. I actually can just smell the air outside. I felt like I'm outside, not inside. It felt like war zone, like I'm in a war zone with huge soundstage. And I think it's not that the soundstage itself was, again, by itself was larger. It's that the airiness, that the clarity give you the feeling that you were actually in open field rather than like kind of in a big hole. Again, there was always that metallic sound that doesn't sound natural compared to the Sennheiser. It's amazing. It's like a big curtain just opens up and you finally find yourself outside in this war zone, really outdoors. It's a huge difference. Whether with the Phillips, you feel like you're inside, like in a room, listening to something that happens outside. I mean, not in the particular footage that you see here. It just happens throughout the listening and throughout the level and gameplay. Again, I didn't know what I'm missing until I got the Sennheiser, because before that, it actually felt and sounded great. And all these lead to so much, and I'm telling you, so much more immersive gameplay experience, especially in games like that, like Delta Force, for example, when you fight outdoors. It's a huge difference. I also elevated using my external deck amplifier, the bass, and it sounds amazing with the sub bass and the explosions and everything. I just want to say that again, when I'm comparing here, I'm comparing that, straight out of the box, right? Without any EQ changes. Although I tested it out, of course. Now just listen to this sound. It's going to be like a swoosh sound. I'm going to talk about this specifically here. So here, actually, again, I switch back and forth. It was a huge difference. This swoosh that you heard, for example, on the Sennheiser, it was very rich, detailed, and expensive sound. You can hear the depth, like the depth that all these projectiles are actually passing through the 3D space. So if you compare to something that you see, it feels like, when you see a gradient, very smooth gradient compared to kind of a blocky solid colors. It gives much higher physicality, and you feel like the projectile connected with the physical properties of the space. You actually feel like, you hear like the projectile passing through the air with its resistance. Whether on the Phillips, I can just hear like several sounds. It doesn't even sound like, you are a Swiss sound. So muddy, so muffled. It doesn't really also carry the physicality that you expect from the sound. But again, it doesn't even connect with the environment, with the air. It just, again, felt so off in comparison. And sometimes because of that, you're going to hear it throughout, that when you have headphones like the Sennheiser HD550, that you feel the texture, you feel the material, you feel the connection with the other physical properties of the environment with various sound effects. Like when they're using HRTF and when you're using some, of course, properties to give sound properties to walls, for example, like concrete wall like you see here, and how sound actually affects it. If it's implemented in the game, of course, you're going to feel it and hear it, and it's going to be so realistic with good open back headphones compared to if you have cheaper ones. I mean, that specific comparison is exactly a proof that this is indeed the case. It doesn't mean that all cheaper headphones will suffer from that. In this particular comparison, it was exactly like that. So, as you can see, now I can actually share my thoughts, because before that I didn't know what to think. You don't really have something, even people tell you so many things, you can't really and fully understand how it's going to be like. Seriously. Because it doesn't matter how they describe it to you, and sometimes they can say higher bass, better treble, accuracy, soundstage. Even they say all of that, you can't really fully understand how it will be like, the difference, how much difference, in what games, what part of the game is going to be that prominent. Now, of course, there is an option to play with EQ, all right, it's something you can do, but I know that for sure, and this is based on experience, that the HSC9600 reacts very bad to EQ changes. I tried it a lot with APO Equalizer and Peace and in some recommendation, download different profiles. It didn't work well. Whether the Sennheiser HD550 reacts so well to EQ changes, I can easily elevate certain frequencies and they react well, keep the separation, and especially, by the way, the bass, it sounds amazing, the sub bass and the bass sound amazing on these headphones. I don't even need to touch the highs and the mids because they're so well tuned to my liking, and it fits so many games that I enjoy playing and also music, to just leave it as it is. Sound maybe elevate it a bit, the highs at certain games, but that's about it. And trust me, you can just leave it as it is and you're gonna enjoy it. But in games that I want more prominent bass, I do increase it, like, for example, Delta Force. So the bottom line is there are huge differences, and you won't notice them even if people will tell you, of course. You won't really comprehend until you try it yourself. So I can't really compile it to a number. All I can tell you that it's a huge difference that makes the games so much more immersive on the Sennheiser compared to the Phillips. I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed that has so much impact is the clarity and the sense of presence I have. I feel more in the game rather outside of it. Like in games like that, like Data Force, I felt like I'm there because of the sound, because the soundstage, clarity, neutrality, the sound so natural, the physicality, the textures. It's more reconciling with how we perceive the neutral sound in the real world and how I feel it in the game. And taking that into consideration, that by itself, it's definitely worth the price that I paid for it. If you compare it not to graphics card, let's say to graphics settings, it feels like I'm moving from low settings to ultra settings. That's how it feels like. Thanks for watching.